100% off the strength, man.
Off the strength.
I did it all on the strength, all on the strength. Fuck talking, I'ma do this off the strength.
Run it back, can't relax, that's just facts off the strength.
It's off the strength. Can't get that off the strength.
I mean, if you want to hang out with Dad, you gotta do the stuff that Dad wants to do. And honestly, what kid doesn't like to ride a bike?
What's going on, fam? This is KR Jones of the Off the Strength podcast, and I am here to tell you to like, listen, subscribe, and if you're feeling freaky, visit offthestrength.com. And that's where you can go and get more information on us. That's where we can link, we can build, we can connect, and let's make this thing work.
What's good, everybody? What's good? Welcome back to yet another episode of Off the Strength, where we're giving you the inside look into all things wellness culture. I'm a trainer called Tony, and of course with me I have a gentleman of extraordinary league.
KR Jones is in the building.
That's right, folks. We are back. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of all type from near and far, you are now in store for a treat because, Brother Jones.
What's the word?
Today we have the privilege of speaking with a fellow biker who I happen to have the privilege of calling a friend and a family member, man. I mean, this household that I have been talking about on this show for the longest time, this man is an indirect lineage in that space, man, and it just makes me really happy about that, man. But more than just a biker that comes from that space, in my mind, he's a pioneer in the realms of music, culture, and cannabis innovation, man. I'm here talking about my brother Alex Norman, man.
Yay!
See, Alex is not only one of the visionary founders of Budega NYC. This is going to be a legal dispensary that is set to redefine Brooklyn's cannabis experience in the upcoming weeks when they open up these doors, man. But not only that, Al was also a mastermind behind a place called PNC Radio, Kyle. Now, this is one of the studios that I got my crucial foundation in, but more importantly, it was something that was shaping the course of hip-hop podcasting history with the groundbreaking show known as the Combat Jack Show, man.
Fitness on Smash?
You understand Fitness on Smash was also there.
I remember that. That Cheeks episode about the buttons. Word.
See, somebody out there was listening, man. You know, from the whole revolutionizing on the cannabis industry to the commitment that Budega has to drive community-based efforts and build platforms that amplify the cultural voices that are important. Alex's journey is something that is not only inspiring, but is also impactful. So get ready to dive deep into the mind of a trailblazer. Let's welcome my brother Alex on here. Al, what's the word, bro? How you feeling?
Thank you. You're too kind.
Man, I had a good time bringing that together, man, because honestly, Al, I don't know if I ever got a chance to tell you how important the whole PNC lineage was to me, just getting that exposure, but seriously, having the experience to do something like this and get my feet wet in that direction was amazing for me. So from the bottom of my heart to yours, thank you for that. And I can't wait to celebrate you for all that you got going on.
Trivia question. I'm gonna put you on the spot. What did PNC stand for?
I know they were the names.
Originally. But shout outs to La Bruja. She transformed or changed the name after we, had our amicable breakup. The original PNC, Norman and Carson, but it stood for People Need Change.
People Need Change. All right, man.
That was the acronym.
I didn't even know. That was the first time. One of one. I would have lost that one.
Yeah.
But man. Speaking of all of that change coming about, bro, I'm so excited to hear about what you got going on with Budega. I'm so excited to talk to you about how just this whole landscape in New York City is really taking shape, and understanding your footprint and your impact in that space, man. It's something that, again, is inspirational but also aspirational in a lot of different ways. So talk to me a little bit about just like what that whole process has been like for you.
Yeah, I mean, as some may or may not know, I'm a former legacy operator, having run, a pretty successful delivery business for over a decade. Part of my, biking lifestyle came from doing those deliveries, on bike, which, for me was like a best of both worlds scenario. How can I ride my bike and make a whole lot of money? Tony can attest. He's caught me out on the streets, coming over the bridges, up and down Broadway in the city, crossing over the Williamsburg Bridge, shooting out to Astoria. So, for me, that bike was always a happy place for me. It still is. But, at the same time, when you operate in the legacy market, you're always behind the curtain. You're always trying to keep your business on the low on an only need to know basis, because either you're trying to avoid getting robbed, or or try to avoid from getting knocked. So now I get to come out from behind the curtain and realize a lot of the ideas that I want to put forth, as it pertains to, cannabis and some of the marketing and branding ideas, that I think everybody in New York has always kind of imagined it to be. I think New York City is going to be the center of cannabis culture and cannabis lifestyle. I always, wanted the brand to be a New York City cannabis lifestyle brand, because that's what I knew growing up in New York. All my friends consume weed. All of my friends. I knew more people that smoke weed that didn't smoke weed. So for us, it was just part of our lifestyle. When we were done playing basketball, the first thing we did was roll up a blunt, go into the club. We had to go get weed. Somebody's assignment was to go to Bushwick and get a bag and then meet up in the city and, have something for the night. It just kind of was always there.
Yeah.
Right. So as far as the lifestyle, it wasn't always about like showing off like, a High Times magazine, or I got the biggest bong, or, I got the most weed. It was just always just part of, what you did, and that's kind of like what I'm trying to reflect or, demonstrate as, what the brand is all about. It's really not so much about the weed, but it's more about the people. Growing up in New York, being a multicultural city, weed cuts through all those, groups of individuals. I mean, I grew up in Queens. As everybody knows, Queens is the world's borough. All my friends were...
I'm not mad at that.
Yeah, all my friends were first generation immigrants. All their parents came here from another country, as my parents did. My family or my blood is Cuban. I had tons of friends in Queens that were Jamaican and Colombian and Ecuadorian and Italian and Jewish, and you name it, they were all there. And guess what? The one common denominator was we all smoke weed. I know a lot of people like to call it a culture.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's so much a culture, because every culture has a special relationship with the plant.
Yeah.
Whether you're from Africa, whether you're from the Caribbean, whether you're from Asia, India, China, all those different parts of the world have, the cannabis has been indigenous to those parts of the world. So for somebody to just say, oh, it's my culture or our culture, is, it's not being fair, to all the other, cultures that haven't experienced it. So for me, I look at it more as a lifestyle, because I don't think that plant belongs to any one person in particular.
Man, I totally respect that. I don't think it's a culture, it's a ritual that kind of exists in all those different cultures, if I'm hearing that correctly, that kind of like, transitions between everything that everybody got going on.
Al, I hear a richness in your story, and I think Tone jumped the gun just a little bit, because we typically would start interviews off with where did you fall in love with this thing we call wellness? But as you just laid out, this journey from childhood to adulthood, and even just the different cultures and communities you came in contact with. My question to you would then be, when did you fall in love with the lifestyle aspect of just the cannabis culture, so to speak? Like, is there a moment that you can pinpoint, like, this was the shift?
I don't know. I think it was just like a gradual thing. I mean, I started smoking weed when I was going into the 7th grade.
Okay.
I crossed that bridge going over into Left Rack City with my boys. Go get that bag. And I remember the first thing he said was, when you get the bag and you turn around and we head back, don't look back. And I was like, why? He goes, you can't look back. So I was like, shit. I was like, it's like freaking Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm going to turn around and I'm just going to turn into salt. But it was more like, don't look back, because then the dealers are going to think that you're looking, suspicious, or maybe you're a cop. I'm like, I'm 12 years old. Like, but so we got the bag, went back over the bridge, over the highway, and, back into, Regal Park, Forest Hills, and, broke down that first dime. It was, probably like 13 seeds in that bag. But, on the way we stopped at Dunkin' Donuts and got a box of, little munchies, and and that was the beginning. So it wasn't really something that really was like a watershed moment. It was just kind of like a gradual thing, because oddly enough, and I always tell everybody the story, like, I smoked more weed in junior high school than I did in high school. And the same thing goes with my friends, because once we got into high school, that's when all my friends, including myself, got on high school teams. I was on the high school tennis team. at Forest Hills. My other friends were on the basketball team. Later, then I made the basketball team. And so it was one of those things that once we got to high school, we're like, oh, we got to be healthy. We can't smoke weed. Like, you know, our competitive spirits kicked in, and now like we had to be the best that we could be in terms of performing.
Yeah.
But then when I went to college, you know, all bets were off, and then just, you know, started back up again. But it wasn't something that you really kind of like, that I really like thought about. It was just always there. It was after I graduated from college and got a real job and was actually able to afford better weed and not just like, you know, regs
13
and
seeds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
13 seeds. Yeah,
A little dime bag.
couple sticks.
That was definitely, you know, a transition to, you know, a better space and realizing, oh wow, okay, this is what, you know, $100 eighth, you know, tastes like and feels like. And was like, man, I wasted a lot of lung.
What I was doing before.
Yeah, I wasted a lot of lung cells on, you know, unnecessarily on a lot of cheap, you know, bad weed. But yeah, it honestly, it wasn't anything that like you really thought about. You know, it was just, you thought about it when you wanted it, and that was it. But it wasn't something like, you know, an addictive drug that like if I didn't have it, I was, you know, like, oh, I got to get it, you know. It was just more like, oh, you know what, I want to smoke now, and just, you know, let me go get that. You know, there was never really like that.
A breakout kind of situation.
Yeah, like a aha moment, or like, you know, all of a sudden, like Cupid's arrow hit me, and it was like, this is this. Yeah, I didn't realize what I had in front of me all this time, and now this is so, you know, I've had a, you know, a very consistent relationship. You know, sometimes I've consumed, you know, more, you know, different periods of time. Sometimes you know, there were times where I go a couple of weeks, a month. It's unique for everybody, right? Everybody's relationship with the plant is different. So
I think it's also going to be something that's changing as you come into this new market, right? Because everything that you just described in that story, although I identify with it extremely well, from the finding it from different places to like trying the leaps and bounds that you used to have to go through to even just like consume in public at any different point in time, all the different stuff that you would have to do. It was really like you had to be putting some stake in the game to make it work. Everything that you're doing and all the work that you're at the forefront of in the legal market is changing that experience for everybody that's coming onto this now. So I do see like the tide shifting, and there's also new people who don't have to deal with all of that craziness that are going to be coming into that.
That's real. Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that side of the game? Like, you're coming into the space where, okay, as somebody who's had the legacy experience and also that's woven into this legal market, like, what are some of the maybe the things that you notice or learned as you're coming into this process? And, you know, what do you see for the consumers?
Well, from the business side, I definitely tell people that the legal cannabis landscape is way more treacherous than the legacy space.
Why is that?
It's just super cutthroat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so cutthroat.
And the rules are not the same.
The rules are not the same. I mean, it's worse than the music industry. It's like even worse than like just like the dumb shit. At the end of the day, like people will, again, and it's been publicized and written about, like, you know, people infringing on my trademark, the Budega trademark, just flagrantly, like they just did it. And I'm like, you know how to look up the trademark, but you're just gonna do it anyway. And now you're forcing me to have to like spend money, you know, on an attorney, and so like it's not like, you know, you're violating, and you know when you violate, there's consequences. It's pretty like black and white. Yeah. You know, and the streets, you know, on the legacy side kind of regulate that. It's that, you know, unspoken word. Like if you cross the line, you know what's going to happen.
Certain rules, things that come with
and
that.
And it doesn't matter who you are, how big you are, whatever. We know growing up in New York, the streets is the great equalizer. Anybody can get caught or can get got, you know, on the
at
street.
Any point.
They can get slid on, as the kids say.
Yeah. So, you know, that was kind of like what keeps everybody in check. You know, in the legacy market, you know, you just can't violate. And in the legal market, people do not hesitate to violate. And I'm not the only one. You know, I've heard already. I want to say horror stories and be dramatic, but just foul stuff. And a lot of guys that are doing the transition into the legacy, from legacy into legal, are learning and are, you know, getting very frustrated and I guess, disheartened about, you know, what the realities are of, you know, legal cannabis. And trust me, everyone says the same thing. They're like, if this was 10 years ago, if this was 5 years ago, like, this would go down a lot different. And I'm like, they know this, and they want you to act out.
Yeah.
And then now they got you in the box.
They got a reason for you not to be a part of this thing that's going on.
So, you know, that's the part of it where, you know, you have to really plan your steps, you know, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead to just kind of like, you know that somebody's waiting or in the wait to kind of try to jump on you and take advantage of a situation.
Yeah, you bring up something that's important in that answer. One, I do want to unpack a little bit more of like what the actual thought process was and like coming up with the name Bodega and like what it's supposed to mean and what it's, you know, representative of in your eyes. Yeah. And just I know it's written about, but give me a little bit about like how that story actually unfolded with, you know, the infringement kind of side.
I mean, the word just came from what we all do in New York. Everything's wordplay, right? You kid around with your friends, you make up words and expressions with each other. You know, Bodega was just a name that we used for a weed spot between my friends as just kind of like a wordplay thing. Because back in the, you know, late 80s, early 90s, all the weed spots were bodegas, not what we just kind of went through the last 2 years with all these illicit shops and, you know, the tens of thousands of smoke shops selling weed. You know, it was you had to be introduced.
Yeah, it was a neighborhood thing.
It was a neighborhood thing. You know, you had to be, you know, brought to the back, introduced to the person had to co-sign for you, and
Cat had to give you the vibe. He's like, all right, he's good, certified.
Yeah, that, you know, that kind of stuff. So, you know, that's kind of like, you know, how that came about. So it, you know, wasn't really like a lot of thought, but it obviously had kind of like a double meaning to it. It was more of a nostalgic, you know, play on the brand and the name. And oddly enough, Bodega wasn't the first name that, you know, I had in mind to come up with for, you know, my brand. You know, we're all creatives. We just sit down, we just write words and play with stuff until something hits, or you smoke some weed and just wait for an inspiration to come in. Trademark the name. Trademark was effective in 2020. You know, I had started the website back in 2020 as well in anticipation of this moment when I started kind of getting an idea that the political climate was finally shifting and this, you know, recreational weed was going to be legal in New York, even though everybody was wondering what took so long. That's when I kind of started, you know, laying down the groundwork for, you know, getting to where I am now. I never thought that I would be running a dispensary. The idea was to kind of have products on the shelf, then running an actual store. But, you know, when the state created the card program for those that had prior cannabis arrests and convictions, I qualified and was like, how do I pass up on that opportunity? It's like tailor-made for me. I qualified and, you know, put in the application and I got it. So, you know, bird in hand, you know, I can't give it up because, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, you should go do the micro license or you should be a brand. And I'm like, yeah, but I got this license now. What am I going to do? Just let it go and then hope in a lottery or however they're making those determinations to maybe hope on the next application, you know, that I get that license. So, you know, it was a no-brainer. I just wasn't going to do it.
Yeah, and you bring up the differences in there. You know, I just want to unpack a little bit of that. So the Office of Cannabis Management has, I say it's probably like up to 6 or 7 different licenses right now. Yep. And, you know, dispensary in the card license was one of the first ones that came online. And I've talked on here before about looking into that same thing that I hit you up about, like, yo, what's this branding side? What's that going to look like going forward? And in all of that, trying to play inside this legal market, there are some hurdles and there's some things that they're going to come up with along the path of trying to investigate that if you're set up the right way, you could play the game the right way. But coming from where I come from and some of the stuff that I've learned along the entrepreneurial route, those wasn't innate things for me to do. So you start to find that you're paying the cost to figure out some of these problems longer down the line, and depending on how long your on-ramp is, this can become a very expensive process. Yeah. And a lot of people thought when cannabis market was going to come legal in New York, it's just going to be like you're going to flip a switch and everybody could just buy weed wherever they wanted to and do whatever they wanted to do, right? But the reality of the situation is because it's now a government-controlled substance in some regards, the regulations that exist around you selling, you growing, you being able to label are kind of like those that you would see in like an FDA kind of situation. Would you be able to talk me through your process in navigating that legal market, like and take me up to date, like, now looking at the forefront of you about to open up the store. Like, what was that process like at the beginning, and like, how did you get to the point where you are now?
Yeah, so in 2022, the first licenses that were issued
Medical,
were,
right?
No, cultivation.
Cultivation, okay.
Right, and that created its own problem for the farmers because of the rollout was very staggered, and there was a lot of stumbling along the way. Not to the fault of the state, as much as people just want to blame government, but the state wasn't suing themselves. A lot of lawsuits came in that really jammed up the rollout and caused all the problems that we had. I want to say it was the only reason, but it was probably like 90% of the reason. Obviously, when things go wrong, everybody's looking to point fingers, but that lawsuit slowed things down from rolling out smoothly. Somebody sued the state because there was a residency requirement in order to be able to get a license. You have to have a residence, and you have to have been arrested in New York. They challenged that in federal court, and instead of letting it drag out, they settled with the plaintiff. In the midst of that, it delayed
Everybody else's process.
It delayed 5 counties.
Okay.
And one of the biggest county that held up was Brooklyn, because that's the largest county in the entire state, along with Westchester, Finger Lakes, Mid-Hudson, and I forgot the other county. But that caused a big bottleneck, because now all the cultivators, the plant, once you put that plant in the ground, it runs on a clock. Like, it's going to harvest at this set time once it's planted. And so once those plants are harvested, they gotta go. They gotta go out the door. They got to get on the shelves, and people got to smoke it. They got to consume it. There's definitely a lifespan on the use of that bud because of the lawsuit, and then also because of the slow rollout on some of the additional stores, because the first people that got licenses or that were given licenses were the folks like myself that had a card license, and the non-for-profits, which was Housing Works, which was the very first one to open. These stores initially were, the state was providing these state-built stores that was being done through DASNY, which is an agency within New York that was going to take charge of the construction and the build out and building out the infrastructure and the hiring and all of that.
Yeah, so everything kind of like the uniform kind of look to it.
Yeah, because most of the people that were coming in didn't have the capital to do it.
Yeah,
I mean, it was well intentioned, but couldn't have been executed worse. And there was definitely a lot of predatory practices taking place by the state, which was honestly, like, I don't even say unfortunate, it was disgusting, because you're not supposed to be taking advantage of the social justice impacted individuals who are basically 9-to-5 guys, some women, 90% were men. When it came to those being arrested and disproportionately targeted in New York during prohibition of weed, there was this perception, going back in the beginning, that whoever has a dispensary is going to make millions of dollars, and the whole attitude going into it was everybody was going to get their piece. And it was just a bad misjudgment of the market and the realities of selling cannabis in New York.
Yeah.
Throw that all into a pot and fast forward to where we are. We're still trying to roll out more stores. Things are smoothing out now, because now we've gotten past another lawsuit, from last summer. The first lawsuit jammed up 5 counties. Then the next lawsuit basically froze the entire state. So if you weren't open and you're in the middle of your construction and build out, you couldn't do anything. You had to stop.
And as a business owner, like, what business could just stop, not have any kind of income coming in?
Right, and you got to pay rent.
And you got to pay rent in the space that you're doing. So
and it was a very uncertain time. Like, I mean, I could tell you, Kaz and Jeremy Rivera and a couple other guys,
Bud, for sure.
Con Bud and Turp Bros, they were a month from opening, and all of a sudden the state got hit with this injunction, and now the entire state was frozen. They couldn't do anything. They weren't going to get a sticker to say they were ready to open. Like, they were just sitting there bleeding money, paying rent, sitting on a $500,000 build out of a space, and there was a potential that their card licenses might actually be voided.
Wow.
Because they were challenging that the card program was unconstitutional.
And now you're sitting on all of that money that you put out, can't really get anything back in, and now you're trying to play the waiting game to see how somebody else is going to dictate your future, which...
I mean, guys were talking about suing the state, but I'm like, wow, really? This is where we're at now? Because if this thing is declared unconstitutional and now you're holding the bag on, $500,000 in debt, it was a rough time for them. For me, I was just waiting. I didn't even get to that point. So a lot of individuals that were dealing with even worse possible case scenarios. So
seeing that kind of adversity and understanding, what the potential still is, what keeps you excited about the industry and where you want to take it?
Just to be able to exercise all the ideas that I've been sitting on for 15, 20 years when I was a legacy operator and couldn't do, some of the marketing and experiential marketing, events and things that I wanted to always do with cannabis, because I always recognized the lifestyle that came with it. We kind of saw a little taste of it at PNC.
Yeah,
right?
for sure, man.
Everybody smoked weed at my studio. And, it was
a fun time on that back porch, man.
It was definitely a fun time that I had my one fanboy moment. I got to smoke with Redman.
Come on now.
That's
a hell of a Mount Rushmore of people that you should be smoking with.
Yeah, I was a huge fan because he was one of the first talking about, Reggie Noble, back in the early 90s. He kind of planted that seed of what the future of cannabis could be, when it came to music and lifestyle and whatnot. So, that I'm just, looking forward to. On top of that, I have an amazing partner that's, going to help me operationalize and execute, on some of the brand and apparel and merch initiatives that make a brand. My brother-in-law, Louis Cologne.
Shout out to the brother Lou,
he couldn't make it. He had a family and, engagement over in Jersey. But, I'm also excited about that. Because you're as good as your team, right?
Yeah.
So I can't. It's one thing. It's important to know that you can't do everything on your own. I kind of learned that the hard way at PNC. Trying to do it all myself, run a delivery service, manage 2 grow operations, and then still push a multimedia company and try to do all those things all at the same time. Because I was always averse to having a partner or multiple partners, because things just become more difficult. So I always tried to just do it as much as I could on my own. But at the end of the day, there's really nothing like having a really good partner.
I want to get into the story about working with family, and I want to get into also the PNC story. But through all of this, Al, I hear a work ethic that is just not parallel with a lot of how people just move around, right? Where do you accredit that to in your life?
Probably my mother.
Talk to me about it.
I mean, my mother only had high school, and she worked. She ended up, becoming a hairstylist at Vidal, probably the most prestigious, hair salon in the world. The mantra, if you don't look good, we don't look good. She later then became, regional director, and it wasn't because she had a degree at Harvard or went to business school. She just had the heart and the drive to just outwork you. And I realized that a lot of people, and this because I draw the same parallel, with sports and even biking.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, you might be able to beat me from here to, that 5 blocks down the road, but can you beat me 30 miles away? To the bridge, the George Washington Bridge.
Yeah.
From Brooklyn. Maybe you beat me to the Brooklyn Bridge, but I'm still going.
Still pushing.
I'm
motor's
still pushing. There. Yeah, the motor's still there. So, talk to me when we get to the George Washington Bridge and we start hitting those hills. And are you going to give up? And, do you have the heart to keep doing it day in and day out? So that was the one thing that always stood out to me, that, my mother was she just outwork you. And I think at the end of the day, that's my one of my 2 superpowers, which is just I'm willing to work harder than the next person, and only because I enjoy it. It's not because I got to do it, or I feel like the pressure or the stress to do it. I mean, obviously I have my son here and I do it for my family, but even before that, it was just doing something that I enjoyed and just being able to do it day in and day out. And a lot of people, when I was at the studio, they was like, oh man, you got the studio, and how do you do this? And I was like, I could give you my whole formula. I could set up your whole studio for you. I'll do it just on the strength. But at the end of the day, do you have the heart and the discipline to show up every day and put out a show and produce a show and turn the lights on and show up, and be consistent? Because it's all about consistency. And so for me, that's just, the one thing that I'm willing to do.
That consistency is not something that you see in above 90% of the population. It's like, it's a rarefied condition to have that and to be able to see, yourself through that whole process. Now, you brought up the PNC, right? I just want to tap into, again, where did that exploration just to even get into broadcasting come from? Like the music side, the love. I could hear the passion in the artist that you're talking about because it's the same artist that I came from. But like, how'd you get into that space in your life?
Well, I was always a DJ by hobby. I started DJing when I was in college. My roommate at the time, he had records and techniques and turntables, and I was always into music. I think most people from New York are kind of always into music. Just all love music. Yeah, it's part of the scene.
Good weed, good music. Some sexy people. That's a good mix.
Yeah, nice sneakers.
It's a
fly
good
jacket. Winter coat, whatever. So, and I get it from my father. My father is a music head. Listened to everything as I was, in the full midst of my delivery service and my, legacy operations back in, 2005, 6, 7, 8. Money was stacking. I was like, I got to do something to kind of show this money if I want to put it to work and at least deposit it, right?
Yeah.
I started a small studio on 10 J Street. It's a small setup, and that's where the whole idea of doing the radio station came about. Good friend, you guys know Dennis Pierre was my first partner. He wanted to do the record label thing. I wasn't so interested in that. I always wanted to do the radio, simply because, again, I was a DJ, by hobby. I used to do parties. I used to have promoters even when I worked on Wall Street that would book me to just, weekends jobs just to do it. If you're a DJ, you just love to rock the crowd and get that reaction.
Feed off the energy,
just feed off the energy and drop songs on, and get those responses. So, you just did it out of the love. And that's kind of like how it all started. And then, I'm a consumer of media. I always think that I have a pretty good ear when it comes to movies and shows and talk shows and radio. And, I just always knew what sounds good. That was my other second talent aside from hard work, is just having a good ear for recognizing quality media and music. And that's kind of like how I just navigated. I feel like I always have a good eye for talent. I know when something's good, I could recognize it. That was kind of like how I went about building the team at PNC and also Urban Latino Radio.
Yeah, man.
Started kind of just building like building blocks, little by little, just kind of started building more and more. And, I saw the opportunity and I learned more. Taught myself Pro Tools. I turned, Final Cut. I just kind of one of those people that just kind of just jump into stuff and
figure it out as you go along.
Just figure it out. I get stimulated. I want to learn and nerd out, and so I just always like to challenge myself and learn new things. You got to be like a sponge and be willing to just learn something new. And I don't know, it's how I am as a person.
Man, I salute it, bro. I see so much of my own habits in that, man. I love every component to that. You ever see 10 J Street today?
I was just there yesterday.
It blows your mind,
crazy.
Huh?
It's crazy.
So they look around, they're like, what?
Yeah,
did y'all do down here?
Damn.
Man, Al, as I listen to this story, I feel like at the heart of it, I'm hearing the hustler, right? I'm hearing the entrepreneurial side of it. I'm hearing how New York really shaped the mindset and just that mentality to go after it. I feel like on the podcast, we talk about that in the wellness sense of being a wellness professional and having to chase clients and build business and all of these things. My question to you would be, how do you refill your cup with such a busy schedule, with such a creative mind of, it sounds like so much output that you put into the world. How do you pour back into yourself?
That bicycle,
man.
And that gym. I'm very committed to it. I'm a big proponent of living a healthy lifestyle. I tell people to do it, but I can't make them do it. I could just set the example. I think you guys both know, coming from that world, You could sit there and tell people, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to eat this way. But if they just don't do it, what are you going to do? The only thing you could do is be that example. And so for me, as much as, cannabis is a lifestyle, health and wellness is my foundation. I couldn't do any of the things that I do if I didn't eat the way I ate, if I didn't ride and put in the miles that I put in on that bike on a weekly basis, and if I didn't hit the weights and keep myself in shape. I'm getting older now, and I'm realizing when I was 20, I could just get on the court and run 8 full courts, no problem, then jump on my bike and then ride out to my mom's house in Jersey like that. Now it's like I gotta actually work out just to get out of the bed and feel a certain way to be able to then push myself and be able to execute. So, my father got me into that. He had a scholarship in soccer when he was, coming out of high school. He used to play football. My mother, when it comes to just eating really healthy and eating right, when I was a kid, never had soda in the fridge and never had iced tea. I had no Kool-Aid. It was water, milk, and orange juice. That's it. There was nothing else. My mother always made me breakfast in the morning. She always cooked at home while still being a hairstylist and coming home at 8 o'clock at night, being on her feet all day, in a salon. So, my parents divorced when I was about 11 years old. But, my father worked too. He was a correction officer and a social worker. But just having to be consistent, and just people are like, oh, you going to the gym, you got to take a. I'm like, you don't realize if I don't go to the gym, I am not going to be the person you know me to be at all. I'm just not going to be that person. I'm going to be agitated. I'm going to feel stressed out. Like the working out and the bike is my release. It literally is what makes all my troubles go away. It gives me a clear head and just releases that tension that can get to anybody, to be honest. You're living in New York, man, it's the gift and the curse. The city, we love it, but we hate it because it'll eat you up, it'll stress you the fuck out. Rent is too fucking damn high. Everything goes up, nothing goes down at all. In order to enjoy this city for what it offers, you gotta get your body right and your mind right.
It's critical. This is bulletproofing yourself at the end of the day.
I can't do anything without me living the lifestyle that I live, in terms of just taking care of myself. And I feel like I'm actually, I know a lot of guys say when they get older, I am actually healthier now than when I was 25. Even though when I was 25, I was a gym rat.
Yeah.
Just now I realize I have to just eat way better. When you're younger, you're like, oh, you tear food down and doesn't matter because you feel invincible. But now I'm like, damn, if I would have eaten and put in the work that I did now that at my age, when I was 20, I'm like, I might have made it to the league.
I could have worked hard. I might have been the same energy.
I might have been maybe I'm on the bench, but like I'm in the league.
I suffer from that delusion as well. You know what I'm saying? I
watch YouTube videos. I'm seeing the guys on. I
can take him. It's fine.
I've been
there.
Yeah. I feel you, man. I ain't mad at that. I love every component of that, man. That's the thing that I really wish I could share with my family more than anything else, for all the reasons why we've had the conversations about how some people look at you like you had a third head for saying I rode out to Long Island, or I rode to Jersey, or I did any of that kind of stuff, or I'm going to the gym for the X amount of time this week. They're like, oh, you need to take a break. It's too serious, all of that. It's that same level of energy that I wish that if you could just make it past a little bit of discomfort and you can get into the point where you actually like it.
Yes.
I wish that they could find that little piece, man. But I see that you do share that with your family. I actually know that. Me and your son out there riding the bikes, going around. Love to see how Noah just lights up when he comes around, man. What's that like wellness lifestyle like transcending into your family? Like, how do you share that, or how do you even like share that love of riding with him?
I mean, if you want to hang out with Dad, you gotta do the stuff that Dad wants to do. And honestly, what kid doesn't like to ride a bike?
Yeah, it's for real.
You know what I mean? All he has to know is like, how do we get there?
Yeah.
Right? So when you just tell people you coming out the crib and you see a neighbor and you're like, oh, where you going? I'm going to the Bronx to, Van Cortlandt Park. They just look at you.
Like, what?
You're from here?
On a bike?
Yeah, they just to them you might as well be going through the Amazon jungle. You know what I mean? Like they have no idea. Like, and it's funny because this happened with the Colognes when they first met me.
That's my
early
family
on.
right there.
I was finally like being a regular at 5 Hart Street, and one day I had pulled up because I lived on Eastern Parkway. I rode the bike to the house. We had dinner, whatever. It was summertime. They're like, "Oh, we're going to South Jersey because you know the family's huge." I think it was like 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to Jersey, but I have my bike." They're like, "You want to ride?" And I was like, you know what, just give me a ride over the bridge, over the Brooklyn Bridge. I get the bike, I take it apart, I put it in the trunk. They ride me over the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm like, all right, you can just let me out here. So I'm putting the bike together, and as they're watching me, they're like, so how are you getting to your mother's house?
The math wasn't mathing.
Yeah, and I was like,
wait, what?
I was like, you see that right there, the West Side Highway, the goes. I said, I'm gonna get on that road, and I'm riding my bike to Jersey. They're like, they literally looked at me like they was going to be the last time they ever see me again.
He's never coming back.
They're like, you're riding to Jersey? This was like 2000. I'm like, yeah, if I keep going, it's going to take me like an hour. I get over the George Washington Bridge. They got a little path. It wraps around. Then I go down 9W. And I'm just trying to like, I'm just trying to simplify it. Like I said, this road really will take me to the very end.
He going to the moon.
Yeah. Yo, Martha Cologne's face was like, I think looking in the car, I think this might be the last time we see this guy again. And I still remember, I'm like, it's so
what?
They're like, you're riding to Jersey? And I was like, yeah, Jen, I'll call you tomorrow.
See you in a bit, I'll be back.
Yeah,
I'm coming back.
Yeah, I've done this.
You.
Yeah, this is what I do. So
man,
yeah, that was a funny time. Yeah.
I love seeing that. Just even in the space that I played in that house, it was kind of like, I feel like that was my second home. I've shared that many times over here. I know I got a lot of my culture from just being in the parties that happen inside there, right? And I think I took that for granted because, again, it was just a hub for all the cool stuff that was happening in the neighborhood. Now, you get to not only meet your future partner, but also have a future business partner in the same household that also comes with this, like, just rich tapestry of all these different things that are connected to what you've been talking about, the things that are important to forming what this New York kind of scene is. You know, the nightlife is there, the fashion is there, the music is there.
The design.
The design components are there, right? My
wife, yeah.
So how does that feel to let that all come together in a business that you're actually, bringing forward now and see, like, kind of like on some Avengers type shit, everybody get to work on this thing specifically? Yeah,
I mean, honestly, all I can say is I'm beyond thankful. I mean, who has the opportunity to tap into that brain trust of my wife, who is, I hate to say it, Jay and Will, but your sister.
She's the better out of three.
I personally just think she's just the most talented. But she's a designer. She's an interior designer.
Not mad. It's still in the tree.
They all got it. They all got the juice, but the sister, my wife, she's the one.
Okay.
But Lou, since he's the middle child, right? He's the most ambitious. He's the middle child. He does have the creative juices and the eye that his sister has, but then he also has the hustle and the business mind and the eye on the money, which is always very important. So he kind of has that balance of the two. But in terms of just raw talent and just design, Jennifer Cologne is a beast.
Hey man,
I mean, she's been
Jen.
published in Architectural Digest. Her work, she worked on the Gucci Museum in Milan, EMI Publishing headquarters. She did that whole design. She CEO of Revlon. Like, I mean, the list goes on and on and on in terms of projects that she was the lead designer on and basically, executed. So that right there is coming right out the gate for the store. But then, being able to work with my brother-in-law, who everyone else knows extremely well for, what he's done on the apparel side, having been part of Fila and that unbelievable growth.
That run was crazy.
That run was crazy because it was just like, Fila, what? What? How did
Put
Fila just become hot, like out of nowhere? And he was instrumental. He was the lifestyle director of that from the beginning to the to the peak.
Sure.
That Fila realized in that 10-year run. And then Jay does my photos.
That's my brother right there.
Like all the stuff on the gram,
Anything,
all the images that people are liking, and why they're following Instagram is because of Jay's pictures. And I get all that stuff at my fingertips at a call, like, you know what I mean? So for me, I'm just very fortunate. I can't expect everybody to be able to have that type of access. Listen, I gave him grandkids, so
it's fair.
Yeah. It's fair. I did 25 years with this, with Jen. I put in the time. So, but
now you get tapped in, man.
Yeah, I'm tapped in. I guess what's the Biggie verse? What is it? Business and family don't mix like two. So like, I did have a little concern working with Lou, even though he was probably one of my top 1, 2, maybe 3 options to be able to be in the role that he's in.
Yeah.
But it really didn't go past that in terms of being able to do what I need to do with the brand to take it to the next level. But I think what Lou's bringing to the table is something that I'm not bringing to the table. So our roles are very clearly defined. Not that we're like, oh, you have to stay in your lane and vice versa. It's just so obvious that, like, when Lou talks about collabs and apparel and and execution, like, there's literally nothing for me to say.
I got a pair on right now.
Other than me just like take a step back. That's Lou. Like, I have literally nothing to offer, because what am I going to add to the conversation that he hasn't already done and executed and has a resume to prove it. So that's the beauty of it, because a lot of times partners bump heads because they both have similar ideas.
Yeah.
And now it's like it's a battle of wills. Well, your idea and my idea, it's like similar, but we have to move it in this direction. No, I think it should go in this direction. Well, I'm going to tell Lou, be like, oh, he's not going to tell it to me, but it's an unspoken word. You can't tell me that we should go this way. I've done this at a level that, sorry, but you just haven't done it. So it's easy for me to just not even question it, because I know, he's the person to do it, and vice versa. He knows I know the weed game, as good as anybody. I grew weed for 15 years. I could talk, he's seen me interact with cultivators and talk about, genetics and cultivars and growing methods and curing and extraction, and he really can't step in there and talk about it. You know what I mean? He's a consumer. But he just can't, so for us, it's a very clear lane and roles that we both have, where it's just undeniable and doesn't have to be talked about.
It's
like
a powerful synergy to see, man.
Yeah,
it's definitely like 2 complementary pieces coming together, and again, the amplification that's going to come off of that is like, I'm excited. I know I'm genuinely geeked about everything that comes along to see. Again, just a family affair coming together. It's like, oh man, I know what this is already going to be, because I've been to that party my whole life.
Yeah.
Selfishly, I've been going to this party forever. It's like, oh, now you get to share that with people that, again, are in a need now more than ever in New York City to have that level of attention to detail, to those specific details, be a part of their consumer experience, man. I think it's going to be a special time.
Yeah, I'm excited. We just gotta get to to this opening, and then just help realize all the things that we want to do and showcase to the world. I'm excited. I just want to get going. I have a Google Doc of marketing campaign ideas for the cultural calendar. That is, I just write them down. So it's just gonna be, we got like a 2-year plan already written down on what we're doing for West Indian Day Parade, what we're doing for Gay Pride, what we're doing for Latin history, what we're doing for Black history. Like, we have...
How we getting on these bikes?
Yeah, how we doing... you and I have already been talking about that. So, that's a given. I'm going to be doing deliveries.
Come on now.
I got to get my miles in, regardless. So,
legs out. We got a coalition of the willing on these wheels out here.
Exactly. And all the health and wellness stuff. And so we're just chomping at the bit to just get open and then create the lifestyle that everybody's hopefully looking forward to experiencing with us.
It's going to be a time, man. You brought up cultivars. I got a couple quick rapid fire things that I want to go into that direction, because again, I think a lot of people are kind of coming into this weed world, Al, kind of like people walking into the wine shop. They comfortably probably know like 3 things.
Yes.
It's like, yo, I know red, I know white, and I know a little bit of rosé in between, right?
Yep.
When you say cultivar, even like that, if I didn't go through the training in cannabis that I did, I wouldn't know what she was talking about what most people would say strain.
Yeah.
Right? And these different types, honally, different marketing exercises that
Can we
go
tell
into
people
that.
to stop saying strand
Yeah.
and not and it's a strain. It's not a strand. I just want to put
Like the
that out.
bookstore.
I just want to put that out there. Stop saying strand. It's
There
not
we
a
go.
strand. It's a strain.
See, the more you know. That's public service
go
announcement.
ahead, Tony. Sorry.
in that, when you're coming onto the market and you have so many different types, you hear names, all the rest of this kind of stuff, you know, people are trying to find like what's going to be their thing, their go-to, right? So quick kind of rapid response, you know, what's your favorite cultivar that you would go to for like creativity?
I mean, you always got to go with the sativas, you know, that, and believe it or not, you know, not believe it or not, I mean, we know it, that New York City is a sativa city.
Really?
I mean, if you look back at the history of the 2 biggest, most popular strains ever, Sour Diesel and Haze.
There we go.
There literally are 2 strains that aren't more sativa than those 2 strains. And I mean, they owned the streets for how many years?
Yeah.
Nonstop.
For sure.
So, you know, that and I think it's also a byproduct of New York City.
Yeah.
You know, it's a
Pace of the city,
pace
everything.
of the city, on the go city.
Right.
We have no time just to be lazy and be home. Like, you gotta
I gotta
smoke
go
it.
do
Yeah,
something.
I gotta get up and go and get this bread. It's tricky because you can't just say I gotta smoke this one strain. Like, I need the sour, I need the haze, I need the guava, I need the pineapple express, or
Yeah.
you know, I need the chocolope, or you know, I could just go on and on and on with the strains, because it also matters who's growing it.
Yeah.
I could give you one plant. I'll give you my sour biscotti cut. I'll give Kyle the sour biscotti cut. And I'll say, all right, go back home and grow this out. Come back to me in 60 days and let's see what it is. It's going to look completely different. It's like me giving you oxtail. There's an oxtail with the
Go make
ingredients. You guys here.
You go make that.
I can even give you the recipe.
They not
You
all
know, the
treated the
pollo
same.
guisado. I'll give you the basic recipe. You guys go to your kitchen, bring it back to me, and we're gonna eat it. And it's gonna have a different taste, and it's gonna have a different experience. So
Yeah.
it's kind of tricky, you know, when it comes to the strains. It's really the cultivator
Okay.
and the brand that's behind, you know, the strain. You have 3, 4, 5 different guys trying to grow this, and women that there are women that grow that.
Are growing the same plant, but you can't really.
You'll get a different result.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And that's where the brand trust and connection and the relationship starts to build.
There we go. That's an important factor, man. All right. So, what's one of your favorite activities to do when you're in that elevated state?
Get on the bike.
What's one of your favorite places to ride?
So I always have like a destination, because like you light, you puff, 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 pass, clip it onto the next destination.
Yeah.
So early on, it used to be the at the top of the Brooklyn Bridge with that view of the bay.
Yeah, for sure.
That's always a dope view. I mean, I love, you know, water. I love being, you know, in the heights, catch, you know, visions, you know, and sights. There's so many spots.
It's all good, man. I'm a waterfront kind of guy myself.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, yeah, I mean, that wrap around the bay in Brooklyn when you catch the path, I think it's like on 65th Street, and you start seeing Staten Island. Not that you're trying to see Staten Island, but you're pulling it up on. You coming around that turn on, you know, as Brooklyn and the island starts to turn, and then the Verrazano starts to come in.
Yeah,
Verrazano's my personal favorite bridge in New York. It's just such a huge, you know, architectural marvel. And so for me, again, it's all about the visuals.
Yeah. I'm with that. Good vista.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, Rockaway, the beach.
Hell
you know,
yeah.
at one point, my son and I, we used to frequent Long Beach, you know, on the bike. You know, again, nothing like waves and sand. Can't beat it. And I know you and I were talking about it off air, that Triborough Bridge.
Yeah, that one's a little tricky for me.
It's a little tricky, but that was a more like newly discovered path. For years, I just never went that way. You know, that's definitely a location that is nice. Actually, the Great Lawn in Manhattan.
Oh, so dope, man.
With the view of Midtown.
Man, I like it.
Yeah.
The elevator situation, a good view, it's going to go a long way. Brother Jones, you got anything on that?
I mean, I haven't been on a bike in a minute, but I definitely can appreciate the views and just even the ride, the scenic vibes is something I can always relate to. As I continue to listen to the story out, man, I'm thinking about the work that you put in and being this pioneer, right? Like at the top of the show, Tone called you a trailblazer from just everything that you've been in, from People Need Change, the studio, to, you know, being a legacy dealer for 15 years, to even growing your own plant. If there was any advice you could give someone to step into shoes that they don't necessarily see, like I'm not even certain if you had a blueprint on how you live the day to day, but if you could give somebody advice to take that next step forward into an entrepreneurial life, into a cannabis life, or even just to what they love, what advice could you give them?
I mean, you just got to make sure you love what you do. And it's cliche. You do what you love and you don't work. You work on what you love and you don't work at all. You know, it's just you wake up and it's just the passion that you have for your craft. If you don't love it, you're never going to be successful at it, right? So, and no matter what it is, what industry it is, if you don't put in the hours and the time and the dedication, it's just not going to succeed. There's no fast money anywhere.
At all.
You know, and the only thing that assures success is just hard work and dedication. So, you know, how are you going to be dedicated to something that is hard to wake up in the morning and do it? As much as the three of us, love to work out, there are days, a lot of times, you just like, damn, I don't, you know, like...
It's this time of year especially.
Yeah, like, you know, I got to get into the gym. Now, you never regret it when you do it, right? Just like anything else that you do, you know, that you're putting into, that you're building. Even on the days that you're not feeling it, when you still get it in, you still feel fulfilled. You're like, you know what? I'm glad I pushed through and made it happen. I got something done. You know, even a small step, at least you were going forward.
Yeah.
If you want to be in the weed game, you just make sure you just love it. It's like music. It's a labor of love.
Quick follow-up. How would you define success with something like Bodega on the horizon, right? Like you have a physical location. What would success look like? You mentioned planning out 2 years. What does 2 years, what does 5 years down the line look like?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Louis and I definitely have kind of had that discussion. We, you know, with the dispensary, we also plan on opening up a cafe that's going to be adjacent to the, you know, to the space. We feel the cafe is going to be important for creating that collective lifestyle experience, not just about selling weed, but it's also sitting down and having coffee and drinking and socializing with individuals and creating potentially a creative space for folks, because that's what we do. We smoke weed and we think and, you know, create. And then having that proof of concept and then being able to replicate that with potentially, you know, another location, whether it's in New York or within the 5 boroughs or Jersey or Maryland or, you know, other states. So we could say all the great things that we want to do. And the one thing that Louis always reminds me of is like, there's tons of people with incredible ideas, but, you know, how are you going to operationalize it? How are you going to execute? Like if you execute and build and create that proof of concept, it's almost like people will come, you know, like if you build it, they will come. And if you execute the way you plan on executing it, then those opportunities will then naturally open up. Being prepared for the moment when we're sitting here talking about all these ideas about the cafe and the events and these cultural calendars and these drops and these collaborations, like they all sound great. All three of us can come here and map out an entire experiential marketing campaign with weed and all kinds of things. You know, we're surrounded by, but how are we going to execute it and then deliver it to the masses? That's where for us we're really primarily focused on, because the one thing about cannabis, it's guaranteed to change, just because, you know, that's the one thing. Whatever is happening now is almost guaranteed to change 6 months from now, especially with like the regs and just, you know, the laws. Is still federally not legal. The day that comes, that presents its own unique opportunity for the better for everybody, but you have to focus on the things that you have control over. So it's kind of hard to say that, you know, what success looks like, but having, you know, multiple stores, licensing the name and creating multiple bodegas other than where we're going to be in Park Slope.
Man, get that address out in Park Slope, because the good listeners are going to need to know where they could pull up. When the official opening comes out, we make sure we follow this up with the announcement. But What's the location, man? 321
4th Avenue on the corner of 3rd Street and 4th Avenue in Park Slope, Brooklyn.
What's the importance of bringing something like that to Brooklyn for you?
I mean, it's important because that's where I got bagged, and that's where how I got my license. Coincidentally, that location is very important when it comes to, you know, the family business that it's going to be. My partner and my wife's family is from that neighborhood. You know, I mean, obviously it's gentrified and changed from late 70s, early 80s when it was predominantly Puerto Rican. My wife and my brother-in-law's father grew up 7-8 blocks away. His aunt lived on the same block as the store, which again was just this major coincidence because we looked at other locations. This wasn't the first choice. This is just where we ended up landing. So, you know, there's just a lot of full circle, you know, circumstances that all happened, not only as it pertains to me, but also to my partner and my family.
Man, and I think that is going to be the thing that honestly I see really getting people to come out there, because the richness of the story is felt in unintentional spaces sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And it
wasn't
still
planned. There was no plan,
right? But it still comes through as authentic, and beyond anything else, New York City needs is authenticity in this market, because I can tell you there's a lot of people who just threw money in here and have no connection to what's going on, or they just feel like because they had experience in other markets that they understood that what this was going to be. And I could tell you, you could feel that when you go into their spaces. You could feel that when you hear them talk about the product. You could feel that they can't even sit down and talk about, yo, I sat and smoked with Redman in the back of my porch. What you know about that? It's like, yo, they're never going to have anything like that. So, my man, I got to tell you, that's going to be the most intricate part of your whole operation, man. I look forward to seeing how it comes across, you know?
Can't talk about it if you ain't live it.
Ain't never lived it. I've seen them. I was like, what is happening with these foods? I would never smoke with you. Why would I buy it from you?
I know.
It's like, this is crazy.
And that's the one thing about New York, man. Just be yourself. You try to fake it, it's just we sniff it out and just
get out of here.
Get out of here.
Go
That's
that
it.
way.
Even if you're not from New York, own that you're from Kansas, and
wherever
we'll
you from,
respect
it's
you.
okay.
Yeah.
You just don't have to be something that you're not. And there's a lot of people faking the funk, man.
It's unnecessarily. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Kyle, you got anything else you want to ask Al before we get up out of here?
No, not at all, man. I'm looking forward to the store. The story is, you know, something we only scratched the surface on.
For sure.
The layers underneath of that is, I think, the real heart and the grit of what you just laid out. So I hope that everybody who gets a chance to shop in that space can understand that when they make that purchase.
Al, here's to the first and many more, man. I really do appreciate it, brother. Can't wait to get back on this mic with you, man.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
For sure, man.
Pleasure's all mine.
Legendary. Once again, it's been another fantastic episode of Off the Strength. I'm a trainer called Tony.
KR Jones.
Peace and much love to y'all. Until next time, we'll see you soon.
Peace.
All right, I got to close this out with something that's very special, because we did have my man Noah is back here. He asked if he can make a cameo. You mind if he jumps on the mic real quick?
Over there?
He can come right over on this side.
Come over here. Come jump on the mic.
So Noah, you heard your dad tell his story, and you heard him share that, and I mentioned on the mic that we share our space from the bike life, man. What did you want to tell everybody about?
Well, my dad here pretty much explained a lot of it.
Okay.
I mean, I do these rides, like they happen
Social
like
cycling, for
these
sure.
social cycling, they happen every Thursday, like at 7:30. I just do it for somewhat as a living.
Yeah,
like,
man.
It's good to get together people with the community, big
Right,
ride to wherever is planned.
It's a fun time, man.
We stop at places to eat. Sometimes we have special guests come along, like what happened when we made a stop in Long Island City and then to Fort Greene Park. Never actually finished that ride, but we had a band.
There was a band there playing music.
Who came along with us.
Yeah, man, it's a great time. We always got to shout out and show love to the TNSR folks. You know, much love to everybody over in social cycling. No, I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's good, everybody? I'm a trainer called Tony, and I am here from the infamous Off the Strength podcast, asking you today, listeners, viewers, wherever you may be, to please like, listen, and subscribe to our podcast. This is how we're going to continue to be able to deliver you the best goddamn wellness information out here. So if you want to keep hearing this and you want us to keep growing, you are a part of this show just as much as anything else. So please go to offthestrength.com. Make sure you check out our blogs. Make sure you check us out on IG. And if you're hearing this voice and you didn't hit that subscribe button, know that Kyle is going to come looking for you.
You got that right.